Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is episode 1 about how I record this particular metal song. I've got here with me a timer, so I hope it doesn't take too long. I'm going to do a series of episodes, so let's start. This one, I'm going to talk about templates, buffer size, drums, guitar riffs, session, guitar amp, sound sims, etc. So let's dive straight into it. So I have here, as you guys can see, a lot of stuff going on this session. This is in Logic Pro X. You can do this in any DAW, okay? Although I'm using third-party plugins, meaning just not from Logic, but from some other brands. And initially, start this is basically around the guitar riff. And I came up with a guitar riff one of these days that I'm going to unmute right now. And this is actually the DI for the guitar riff. So there's no sound on it, okay? So I'm going to solo it so you guys can hear it, how it sounds. And let's go straight into it. This yellow bar is the cycle bar, so I put it in the loops, whatever I want it to. Okay, so I want to put it right here. So this is my PRS drop D with standard tuning. And for this, I was using, essentially, I use what I have at hand. I mean, what's faster. Doesn't have to be the amp, so I use a lot of amp sims. And I started with this amp sim from Waves called PRS Archon, which is basically based on the actually Archon from PRS. And I can recall the preset I have right now. I have one of my own here. It's only up, okay? So, you know, all these knobs and stuff like that. We'll talk about that later, okay? So now it would sound like this. Of course, there are things to adjust. And by the way, this is going into a subgroup, which is called guitars, as you can see here. I want to highlight this, where there's a bunch of plugins that are now disengaged that would enhance the sound, okay? So after that, I just decided to go with the Katana. So no plugin here. I'm gonna unsolo this, and I'm gonna solo the guitar, the Katana guitar, one of the Katana guitars. And one of them is here. I'm gonna disengage this pan knob to put it in the middle. If you guys notice, this first reaction we have is not a huge sound, but then that by itself, and this is an important tip for the mixing guys that are starting out, it doesn't mean that it sounds bad, because you don't listen to things alone. You don't listen to things in solo. You listen in the context of the song. So by itself, it might sound, because it's very heavy processed, but in the context of the mix, that's what matters. So if it sounds good, it will stay. So for this guitar, which I'm calling Katana Guitar Left, I'm using on this channel, I'm using, this is very fast because I'm going deep on other episodes. I'm using this EQ channel strip from Waves, and as you guys can see, I'm cutting here some low end, boosting some frequencies. We'll go into deep further into other episodes, and that's pretty much it. Then I have another EQ. I think it's not doing anything. No, I'm incorrect. Another little boost here, and then finally on my Katana sum, which is basically the sum of the sounds of my guitar. There's a lot of processing here, okay? So I got a limiter to start off with from Waves. We'll go into that later. I'm just showing the plugins there's here. I got this EQ from Logic. I got this FabFilter Pro multi-band compressor, yes. I've got this API, which is a compressor as well. And I got this Kramer from Waves, which is from a channel strip, which is an EQ as well. Okay, so basically, if I put together both guitars right now, they all sound like this. So already they're sounding much better. In the context of the mix, it will sound like this. Sorry, because I have one of the guitars which is playing, and this is the DI. I'm going to mute it. Okay, once again. Okay, regarding drums, which is the next, which is basically I start with the guitar riff and then the drums. I'm using a plugin you guys probably know that is Easy Drummer 2. Right now I have the MIDI channel here with all the notes, but the plugin is not loaded. Okay, I can load the plugin so you guys can see it, but I guess you pretty much know Easy Drummer 2. And this is basically, I build up all this stuff that you guys can see here by myself, using sometimes something that is already done inside the plugin, then I drag and drop, and I'll customize it to my taste, because this is just dragging and dropping. And the different colors here in MIDI have to do with volume, okay? So if it's green, it's low. If it's really red, it'll be much harder, which will be much higher in volume, the notes, okay? So it's fairly simple to understand. It's called velocity instead of volume in MIDI, okay? I don't have the plugin right now because I would have to create a channel, but we go into that later. Now I'm gonna click the H button because we'll hide the tracks that I don't need anymore. There's a lot of tracks here that are hidden, okay? I don't delete them because I might need again the MIDI drums, okay? To change anything or something like that. Now, what I do next after that is recording the bass. And the bass, I'm using an Ibanez bass, which is pretty cool. And the Ibanez bass by itself, with no plugin, I'm going to put this in loop mode. I'm going to put this in bass. I'm going to disengage everything, which is a lot. Just the DI sound is like this. So I'm basically doing what the guitar is doing. And regarding plugins, we got a bunch of them here. And to start off, a channel strip from Waves, a gate because there's a little bit of noise here in between the notes. And then I have this bod. This is free, which is kind of a Sam's amp. All right. Then I got a bass amp from Logic. So this is stock from Logic. Also, I mess around with the knobs as well, of course. Then I have another channel EQ, cutting some stuff that I don't like. We'll go into that in detail in another episode. I got a compressor here, but this compressor is doing a different thing. I'm going to show you quick. This is for the bass, this compressor. This one is not for the bass. This one is one of those techniques that you learn as you go. So what this compressor is doing is basically this. It's side chaining with a kick. So what that means is every time the kick hand gets in, the bass will be attenuated by a few decibels. You can see that the kick bass is fighting for space as well as the bass. So you have to go around and try to do your best. And side chaining is cool because this EQ is listening to audio 1. Audio 1 is now labeled as kick in, okay? And the side chain is here, as says here, audio 1. So this is listening to the bass. So every time the kick comes in, the bass will be reduced by a certain amount. Check it out. I could put this more extreme, and you guys will notice the difference. Check it out. So every time the kick goes in, you have the bass drops a few decibels, so they have room to breathe. It's very important in the low end, especially because you don't have much consciousness of the low end, especially if you don't have a minimal acoustic treatment in your studio, okay? Of course, then I added another bass that you can do that as well, which is basically doubling the track. And in this case, I have a very distorted bass, if I'm not mistaken, with almost no low end, and I'm using, once again, this channel strip from Waves, and then I'm using S-Gear 2, a guitar plugin, which sounds really good on bass, why not? And the compressor is doing the same thing, being attenuated by the kick drum. Since we have two identical signals, I hope this is not much information, we have to check out for phase issues, and phase issues means that you might lose some bass or some, especially the bass gets lost in the mix if they are together and having the same wave, because it's exactly the same bass. So on this SSL channel strip, you might have to check, or on this one, if there's any phase issue. I'm gonna mute the kick drum so you guys can see what I'm talking about, and put the bass and click on this little red button here that has to do with the fade. So I'm going to engage it, and let's see the sound. Let's see if there's any difference if I disengage it. They are in phase, so when I engage it, I don't know if you guys can hear that difference. It's very subtle, but the mids on the bass get a little bit muddier or something like that. Check it out again. It's on right now. As soon as it's engaged, they gain again a lot of bass. So I'll explain that also as well in another video. So it's very important. I use templates, and if you guys don't know what that means, it's basically I use something that is already made for me to record, so I don't have to waste my time adding new tracks for every step I do. Like if I want to record guitars, I already have like 4 tracks with plugins, usually to be faster, and I have already Easy Drummer loaded in this track with my custom preset, okay, and so everything is in place. Imagine having this without any of these tracks, recorded audio tracks, okay. That way you can go much faster recording stuff, and also there's a lot of post-processing in the sense that you can send your signal to other auxiliary tracks to add reverb, chorus. One thing that you should never do, I mean, it's not common to do, is, if, for example, on my guitar, on my Katana, I don't have effects on the channel by itself. I have effects that I send to another channel, a proper channel for effects. So I'm going to demo that on a new section that I've made on this song here, where I have sort of a solo guitar, and that solo guitar is kind of cool, has a lot of effects, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. So the solo guitar is here. Doesn't have any plugin because I already had one of those PRS that I had it here for the solo. I didn't use the Katana. And then I'm sending, if you see this B13, B21, B20 are the buses, I'm sending this to other channels. If I click here, you'll see there's a tall chorus. If I click here, I'm sending to a delay. If I click here, I'm sending to a reverb. So, and these green circles, that determines the amount of signal you're sending to that particular track. So if I disengage them at all, they'll sound like this. It will sound like this. I'm gonna put a little bit louder right now so you guys can see what I mean. Totally dry, so there's no effects on the actual no effects. When I mean effects, I'm talking about reverb, delays, chorus, and stuff like that. You can put, of course, EQs and compression. That's the way we do it. We put compression, EQs, and stuff like that to shape the sound, and then we send the signal to other tracks, auxiliary tracks, to add effects like reverb, chorus, delay, etc. So, and I painted this guitar real hard right. Now, if I engage them all, check out the difference. And you might be wondering, that sounds kind of very fizzy and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter, once again, because you don't hear two stuff in solo, you hear them in context. Well, let's check out this part in context and see what it's doing with the rest of the guitars. To me, it sounds very good. The music was too short, so there's a kind of an abrupt stop here, but it sounds good anyway. I'm gonna put the song so you guys can see what I've done here. Okay, so there's something wrong here. Okay, this guitar was unmuted. All right, so you guys could see that this section here was by itself a little empty because the drums suddenly stopped. So I decided to use some Apple loops in this case, and I call them pads, like the titles are back here, title reverse feedback. And if you listen to this by themselves, just solo my voice as well so I don't lose sound, you can see there's a lot of things going on underneath those guitars. There's a lot of effects here. This is just to embellish the sound while the clean guitars are playing, okay? So this is to your taste, to your imagination. It really doesn't matter what you put there as long as it sounds good. And I also had this reverse hi-hat or something like that to go to the other part. So it makes a difference, okay? So these are components from the composition part. Because after listening to that, I thought to myself, it's very, very kind of dry, although the guitars have a lot of effects, but it needs something underneath. So I decided to put all these effects underneath, okay, to embellish the song in some way. So this is basically it. The mixing window, it's here. There's a few shortcuts here to get to there. And as you can see, guys, from all channels are very populated. This is my vocal channel I'm using right now. Are very populated in terms of EQs, limiters, compressors, stuff like that. And then in yellow, normally I choose yellow. I have my auxiliary channels to put the reverbs, the delays, the chorus, and stuff like that, okay? And it's not a large session by itself. You can see if you count the tracks, well, I don't know, I didn't count them, but maybe 20 or 30 tracks, I don't know. And I'm going to bounce all this stuff for you, but I'm going to bounce it without effects so you guys can have everything as you want to, okay? I just have to disengage every effect and just bounce every track and label it. And it's a good idea. This is also another tip, and I'm going to fire on this episode, is to label everything right. So I'm going to label stuff like 01 kick, 02 kick replacement, 03 snare. So when you load up those stems, as they are called, into your DAW, automatically they'll become in the same order. That's very important if you're working with a client and you're sending your stuff, okay? And always remember, I'm working at 24 bits, 44.1 kilohertz, so you're going to bounce exactly as you're mixing or recording. Don't do something like putting in MP3, never, and don't go from 24 to 16 bit because the mastering or mixing engineer you're sending this to will work in the same format as you did. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to embellish the sound. One thing that I recall doing right now, I'm looking here at the screen, there's this snare big verb that I decided to add. So I'm going to solo my voice once again, and just the drums, so you guys can see what I decided to put here. I took the snare down in volume, the basic snare. I muted the snare replacement. We'll talk about that in a second. And I added a second snare, which is a copy from the first, but with a lot of effects. In this case, I didn't bother too much, so I really enjoyed the effects that it's giving me. So I'm going to put a little bit behind. Check out the sound. So basically there are two components here, this pad effects and this one. Let's just listen to them. Sounds kind of huge, right? But with the drums, it sounds totally different. Let's check out. Now you got to get room to this kind of stuff because you will see that in the very crowded mix like this one, the things tend to disappear and you guys probably won't notice if I didn't show you up. So with everything together, I also deleted those solos that were going before, right on top of that, and just left this one that I'm going as well record again because it's not one of the solos that I like the most. So it sounds like this, something like this. There's a lot of effects going on as well, as you guys can see here from the channel. Logic presents the channels that I choose on the left. So I think I pretty much cover everything. Just one little thing before I go, and I hope this is not very heavy for you because you'll have a lot of questions probably. And I want to answer every question you have, any question you have, okay? I use the snare replacement, which means I use MIDI to enhance my snare, original snare, snare and kick. For example, my original snare is this one. It comes with Easy Drummer, and I put this underneath. Together in the mix, they'll go for a great sound. And then I got my snare sub probably where I have a lot of effects on the snare as well. It's all part of mixing. All these lines that you guys see here, it's called automation. If you have a static mix, and I mean automation, you can do a lot of stuff like automate volumes, automate effects, like more delay in certain parts, more the chorus in certain parts. I'm talking about effects, more the reverb in certain parts. And right now, what I have here for now, it's automation on the overheads from the drums, which is very important. So in this part here, I decided to go a little bit lower in volume. And they're already processed with a bunch of stuff, SSL channels as well. And then they gain volume again. So this is to make sure that your mix is not static, always the same thing from beginning to end, because automation is what makes a track become alive. It's one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of any mix, okay? So all these yellow lines are about automation. I was talking about latency, and latency has to do with the buffer size, the size of the buffers you have on your DAW. And in my DAW right now, I have this at 512 samples. And it will give me this around 13 milliseconds of output, which is a lot. But when you start recording, if you have a faster machine, you can go down to 32. That's ridiculous. But 128 or 64 will do great for recording. But then when you start mixing, you want to increase this because you no longer need the low latency because you're not recording. You want to increase your buffer size so you can deal with a lot of plugins, and your workstation works pretty well. It doesn't go down, any stuff like that. This is very important, all right? But sometimes you have a mix like I do right now at 512 samples, and I want to record another guitar. And that might be a problem if you don't have enough fast machine. And by fast, I don't mean just the Core i5 or the Core i7 and the amount of memory, which is very important as well, but also keep in mind that I'm recording everything to an external hard drive, and that's very, very important. You don't want your... Nowadays, you have SSD disks, and they're very fast, but if you can have all your stuff on a separate disk, you'll have one disk reading and the other one writing, not the first or the main original disk doing both things at the same time. So the computer will thank you for that, okay? So that's a lot of things going on around here. I hope you guys enjoy this. I tried to make it as small as possible. I think it's impossible. This first episode about how I mix my metal song. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so. Please post your comments below or questions so I can so I know what to answer on the next episode, or cover or tell me what you guys want to see cover on the next episode, okay? So thanks for watching and cheers.